Good morning, buenos dias, good afternoon. Welcome to Immigration Spotlight, our online virtual gathering of the Latin America Caribbean Committee of the Loretto community, bringing you border updates, news of emerging issues facing the migrant, asylum-seeking, and farmer workers communities, and those on the front lines working for immigrant justice. I'm Rosa Lizardi. I'm the chair of the LACC, as it's known by its acronym. The LACC was founded in 1985 to seek justice and peace for those impacted by the austere and inhumane immigration policies and decades-long interventionist foreign policy of the U.S. throughout Latin America and the Caribbean region and beyond. Today, we have a wonderful program, and as is our tradition, we will begin with a prayer and reflection. So let me introduce Maureen Flanagan, a wonderful member of our LACC from Denver. She's an incredible volunteer and immigrant/migrant advocate from that region who has helped organize this Immigration Spotlight and will moderate today's program. So, Maureen, over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Immigration Spotlight. I have a brief poem that Rox Monterstelli, who's on here today, sent, and it's called Inauguration 2025. In a time of hate, love is an act of resistance. In a time of fear, faith is an act of resistance. In a time of misinformation, education is an act of resistance. In a time of poor leadership, community is an act of resistance. In a time like this, joy is an act of resistance. Thank you, Ross. So this morning, we have two speakers. One is Gina McAfee. She's a woman that is very active here in Denver as a development of the immigration protection teams. I'm going to do a brief bio of her, and then she's going to do a program about what is going on in our Denver, Aurora, Colorado area. For 10 years, Gina McAfee has been a volunteer with Coloradans for Immigrant Rights. It's a project of the American Friends Service Committee, AFSC. In that time, she led the push against alternatives to detention and for-profit models of immigration enforcement and detention. She was also active in multiple meetings with our federal members of Congress, advocating for decreased funding for ICE and the CBP, Custom Border Protection. After the election, she and Jennifer Piper with AFSC formed immigrant protection teams all over the state. These teams are focused on education and political advocacy in support of immigrant communities. Jenna is a native Coloradan, has 2 adult children. She enjoys hiking and just returned from a 4-day raft trip down the Green River in western Colorado. And she's very good at making good trouble. Welcome.
Thank you. There's nothing I love more than making good trouble, that's for sure. So I thought I'd just give a little bit of a more personal discussion or information about why I got so involved in immigrant rights. There were 2 basic reasons for that. One of them is that my daughter fell in love with, and then ultimately married an immigrant from Saudi Arabia. And I helped him through his naturalization process. And it was during that process that I realized how problematic our process is. I mean, he is a highly skilled electrical engineer, was educated in the United States and then decided to stay. And we made that process of him getting, getting his naturalization as hard as it could possibly have been. And I just was shocked at how many roadblocks our system set up to try to prevent him from becoming a citizen when, we need people like him to come to our country and to help out. And he told me that in his class at Arizona State University, there were no American-born people. It was all foreigners who were learning how to become electrical engineers. Apparently, that's a field that's too difficult for Americans or something. I don't know. Um, but anyway, so I was appalled at how difficult, and he would not have become a citizen had I not stepped in and hired a really expensive lawyer to help him through that process. That was the first reason. The second reason was also personal. My son, who's a very kind-hearted person, without really realizing what he was volunteering for, said that he was willing to house a couple of asylum seekers who had come to Denver, who had been moved to Denver. They were trans women, one from Guatemala and the other one from Ecuador. And he raised his hand and said he would volunteer to house them for a few days. Well, that ended up being a couple of years. And through that process of helping him, I realized again how horribly we treat asylum seekers. And, both as they are coming to the United States, presenting themselves for asylum, and then they were also in the Alternatives to Detention program for about a year. And we treated them horribly in that process. The good news is that both of them were able eventually to receive asylum after many years. But again, I learned a lot about how our system works through that personal experience. So right after the election, I knew that I had to do something to bring myself out of the pits of despair. And I talked to Jennifer Piper from the American Friends Service Committee, and she and I talked about different ways that I could mobilize people to help. And what we were noticing at that time is that many other states, Illinois, California, Connecticut, just to name a few, the governors of those states or the attorney generals of those states were coming out proactively and saying that we will protect immigrants in our states. But we noticed that the Colorado governor and the Colorado AG were not doing that. So that was initially the reason that we wanted to start what we ultimately called immigrant protection teams. And it was to stand up for our immigrants, for the immigrant communities in Colorado. We wanted to make it clear to them that they had somebody standing with them, someone who recognized that, the actions that were being proposed by the Trump administration would be harmful, and we will do everything in our power to assist. So what we did, eventually we focused, and Maureen mentioned Aurora and Denver. Initially, we focused on Aurora and Denver, but then we started getting more and more interest in expanding the immigrant protection teams statewide. So I think at this point, we have 23 teams that are operating across, of course, all across the metro area. We have maybe 10 or 15 of those are just in what we would call the Denver metro area. I don't know how many of you are from Colorado, but that would include, Denver and Aurora and Jefferson County and Arapahoe County and Arvada and Boulder. And but we also have teams in the northern part of the state, Greeley and Weld County. We have teams in the southern part of the state, Colorado Springs, and we have teams in the mountain area and on the western slope. In fact, our newest team we just formed yesterday is based out of Cortez, so it will be in the southwestern part of the state. But, teams in Grand Junction and Summit County, Eagle County, those are the mountainous areas of the state. So we have the teams spread out all over the state. The purpose of these teams, I mentioned just the need to show immigrants that we support them, but we also are doing everything we can think of to refute the many myths and lies that are told all the time about immigrants. And that most people believe because they've heard it over and over and over that, immigrants are criminals, that immigrants suck resources. And none of that stuff is true. We did a lot of research and we've prepared factual information that refutes all of those lies. And if any of you are interested, that is certainly something we could share with you. Again, we want to support immigrants, refute the lies, but also advocate with local, state, and federal elected officials to develop more humane policies for immigrants, to support immigrants. The activities that our IPTs do across the state vary. We do everything from political advocacy, which means going to city council meetings, going to county commissioner meetings, meeting with our state legislators and our federal legislators like in Aurora, we were able, after a lot of work, to convince the City Council of Aurora to adopt a resolution in support of immigrants in the city. At the state level, I'll describe this a little bit later, we were just recently able to pass some new legislation that is supportive of immigrants in our state. And at the federal level, we push our federal representatives constantly to not approve the federal reconciliation bill, as an example, because the increases in funding for ICE and CBP in that bill are shocking. I mean, a 365% increase in funding for ICE. It's really horrible to think what they're going to do with that additional money. So we put pressure on our federal electeds to to not vote for that federal reconciliation bill. We will put pressure as soon as there's any kind of legislation proposed, either that will hurt immigrants or help immigrants. We will have our IPT members call their state legislators. We set up meetings with, or call their federal legislators rather. We set up meetings with our federal legislators, particularly the Republicans in Colorado, to make sure that they know that the people in their district support immigrants and, give them information about how much the immigrant community contributes to the economy in those particular districts. And, we bring in people representing agriculture as an example. I'll make sure that I keep saying immigrant protection teams rather than IPTs. We bring in people to talk to the federal legislators representing different industries. We've done quite a bit of writing letters to the editor to have in local publications across the state. This is what we've heard from the staffers of state and federal legislators is that they read the letters to the editor to get a handle on, what their constituents are thinking. So we use the letters to the editor as a way to communicate with our elected officials. We set up trainings for our immigrant protection team members, trainings about know your rights. That's really an important thing that our leaders have done across the state is provide information to immigrants in their communities about their rights. We set up trainings for people to be trained as what are called confirmers. And what this means in Colorado, we have a hotline that anybody who sees an ICE activity happening in their neighborhood or in a business area, what they do is call the hotline, and then the hotline, whoever is working that, the dispatcher of the hotline, then sends out an alert to people who are trained as confirmers. And what that means is that you then show up to that location, confirm whether or not ICE is there, take photographs. You bring Know Your Rights cards to that location in case there are immigrants there who are not aware of their rights. So you're basically just there as support for the immigrants, but also to bear witness on what is happening, and then you report that back to the dispatcher. So that's called a confirmer. We also have people who are trained as to be court accompaniers, people who are trained to go with immigrants as they attend any court hearings about their immigration cases, or as they go to ICE check-ins, which are required for people who are in the Alternatives to Detention program. They are required to check in with ICE as their case is proceeding along the asylum, to determine whether or not they get asylum. We set up and attend protests and rallies, and we do fundraising for legal fees. So those are just some of the activities that our teams are doing across the state. Maureen asked that I also provide information about the Senate Bill 276, which just was signed into law earlier in this month. So we're very pleased about that. The Senate Bill 276 in Colorado is designed to kind of add on to some earlier immigrant protection bills that we passed in Colorado. What it does, Colorado provides some services to undocumented immigrants, and the agencies who are responsible for providing those services, this is primarily healthcare, some mental health care, that kind of thing. Those agencies have to collect data from undocumented immigrants. So it was important because we knew that ICE would try to get as much data as they could about undocumented immigrants. So we felt it was necessary to put protections in place to make sure that the agencies who were collecting that data did not share it with ICE. So Senate Bill 276 has codified that now so that public agencies cannot share information about undocumented immigrants with ICE. The other thing that Senate Bill 276 does, I don't know if you folks are familiar with, soon after the Trump administration took office in January, in fact, one of their very first acts was to rescind a memo that ICE, this was an internal memo to ICE, that indicated they could not conduct any operations in protected spaces like schools and hospitals, medical facilities. And the Trump administration rescinded that memo. So nationwide, at this point in time, ICE is able to come into schools and try to apprehend people. They're able to come into hospitals. So what was happening in Colorado is that the undocumented immigrants that we have in our state were afraid to they were afraid to send their kids to school. They were afraid to go to hospitals. They were afraid to go to clinics. They were not taking their children for well baby checkups. So, now in the state of Colorado, it is against state law for ICE to conduct those kinds of operations inside schools, hospitals, daycare facilities, clinics, any publicly owned community facilities like that. So at least in Colorado, people are not going to be as afraid to access those services. The other thing that Senate Bill 276 does is to further clarify. We had state legislation that already did this, but there were a couple of loopholes to clarify the clear division between what local law enforcement does, which is to enforce criminal violations of the law, and what federal immigration does, which is to arrest people because of civil immigration violations. So these are two very different functions of law enforcement, and the new Colorado law reinforces that local law enforcement is not going to assist federal ICE with their immigration enforcement. So we are very pleased that this was able to pass both the House and the Senate in Colorado and was signed into law by Governor Polis. The immigrants in our state really feel that this law will reduce their overall fear in the community. The other thing I thought I would mention is just very recently, in the last couple of weeks, there has been a new approach by ICE, which is to go into the courthouses where there are immigration cases being heard. And what ICE does in those courthouses is to the ICE attorneys, when a family or an individual comes in to get their case heard, they have arranged for those attorneys to basically dismiss removal proceedings, which then allows other ICE agents to come in and basically arrest those people who have come into the courthouse for a required hearing, arrest them, and start deportation proceedings for expedited removal is what it's called. So
Hello,
yeah, can you hear me?
this is Mary Ellen.
Oh,
Hi.
I think she's on the phone.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
We
I'll
have
keep talking.
Gina presenting, Mary Ellen. If you can mute yourself, thank you.
What?
Sorry.
So, this naturally, this has caused a great deal of fear and consternation from the immigrants who are trying to do things the right way. They're trying to come into the courthouse and, show up for their hearings. They would get put in deportation processes if they didn't show up, and here they are showing up, as they're required to, and potentially getting apprehended. So we've set up two types of ally responses to this. One of them is that we have the people who have already been trained to accompany these immigrants to court. We have them setting up what we call a court watch, which basically means to be at the courthouse, hand out materials to immigrants, and then to report back to our hotline if there are ICE agents, in or around the courthouses. But we also are setting up, and this has just been going on for the last week, ally support in the vicinity of the courthouse. So we have people who are allies showing up just outside the courthouse with signs and just, saying that we are there to support the immigrants, that we disagree with this policy change by ICE. And then the other thing we're doing is distributing information because apparently what's happening is that there's a change in protocol at the ICE check-ins. People previously had been taking their children to these check-in areas, and we're now advising people to work with their lawyers to make sure they want to bring their children, because if they got arrested, again, doing the right thing, then the children would be at the ICE check-in and might be either caught up in a deportation proceeding or, the adult might be apprehended and the child would be left unaccompanied then. So anyway, those are a couple of new things that are happening.
Oh,
Our role in all of this is just to keep on top of what's happening and then to come up with, a new way we can support the immigrants that we are protecting. So that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Jenna. It's really very informative. One of the reasons we have Immigrant Spotlight is to highlight things that are going on that weren't going on yesterday and are going on today, and you really accomplished that. I would open it up to anyone that has a question for Jenna. So I do. I just have a question that I might know the answer to. So the 276 did not prevent ICE from going into court.
An earlier law does.
Okay, because
It's
it's happening as we speak.
It is. Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's clearly a violation of state law for ICE to be going into courthouses and arresting people in the courthouses. I'm told that Phil Weiser's office is planning to bring a lawsuit against ICE for this action. I don't think they've done it yet. As you know, Maureen, this has only started in the last couple of weeks.
Right.
So they're probably still working on the lawsuit, but it's clearly a violation of state law.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any questions for Jenna?
I have a quick question. Thank you so much, Jenna. And you were starting to mention this expedited removal. If you can just give a little bit more information about that. Thank you.
I don't, this is a process that's been around for a while, hasn't been used much, but what it allows is for a very expedited process for putting someone in removal proceedings. Maureen, I don't know if you have any more information about it, but the Trump administration is beginning to use this more frequently. I think it's if someone's been in the country for less than 2 years or something like that, that they could be placed in expedited removal.
Right, they're specifically targeting Venezuelan immigrants, and the judges, many of the judges are allowing it to happen in their courtrooms as well. I was disturbed to read about that. I just got 2 newsletters yesterday explaining it, and I haven't read them yet. I had cataract surgery, so this is
Oh,
kind of
wow.
the first day I can read. So I have to get to that, but I can forward those 2 newsletters that explain. Honestly, it's sort of like the first paragraphs are good news, and then it's all the terrible news that takes forever to read. So one is from the National Immigration Justice Center, and they're really always on top of things. Sally, did you have a question?
I do, Jenna. Thank you so much. God,
Sure,
it's just so heartbreaking to hear.
it is.
You tell us about, it's not that we don't know, but to hear from someone who's right there doing the work, we really appreciate it. So I have a number of questions. I guess the one I feel compelled to ask is, what advice are immigrants being given about whether or not to show up for these hearings? And I know you're not probably in the business of giving them advice, but
I am not.
what are their lawyers advising them?
There was actually a really good fact sheet or newsletter or something that I read yesterday from the National Immigration Project, I think it is. Yeah, National Immigration Project. And the lawyers, there's no way the lawyers can advise immigrants who have a court hearing to not show up for the court hearing. But what they are recommending now is that the lawyers apply for a remote, apparently there's a remote option. So that rather than showing up to court, they sign up ahead of time for a video conference to avoid, needing to be there in person. And so far, the judges have been willing to, to accept these requests for video conferences instead of showing up in person. So that's
So are the
primary.
judges colluding with ICE in terms of being prepared to dismiss the case right there on the spot when the ICE lawyer makes that motion?
I, again, don't know enough about the court hearings to know if the ICE attorney just makes this, kind of surprise determination. I don't know if the judge is just going along with it, or Maureen, again, I'm sending this back to you if you know anything specifically about what happens.
It's very similar what I was able to kind of read yesterday to what immigration protection teams do. It's more, there isn't a way to really stop it, but your lawyer is there. And honestly, I went to immigration court a few days ago at the detention jail, and there was only one lawyer for all these people, so they really don't have the protections in the court that they really need, because they're all saving money for their asylum hearings. Because they didn't know that this appearance was going to be a problem. And so they're not represented, and they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. And the judge in this case that I had actually belonged, and this, to the Lichter law. She was a lawyer with, and so she was very, very, what I would say, lenient and pro-immigrant in her rulings. She also had a couple video hearings while I was in there. So she was open to that. Now, no one, ICE was not in, ICE ran the place, so the people were already incarcerated, so there was no point for them to be there. But it's my understanding that it's really, at this point, people are just being witnesses and lawyers are trying to intervene, but I don't know that you can really stop it.
Thank you.
And I think Jean has a question as well.
Thanks. Thanks, Eugenia. That was amazing, what you're doing. I've lived most of my life in Denver, but I now live in Arizona. And we do not have nearly the liberal legislature. We do have the governor, but and so I wondered, and pretty much all the same things are happening there. But does your model do they do that at other through an American Friends Service Committee? Are you all collaborating with other states on any more national agenda?
Not at this time, no. And in fact, there's no reason that that these kinds of immigrant protection teams can't be formed in other states. I think you just need the
Yeah,
volunteers who are willing to work, you know.
Yeah, no, we have them in Arizona also.
Oh, good.
Yeah. No, my question was more on a national level. I didn't know if AFSC was bringing groups together through their network nationally around any pressure, legislation, anything like that.
Certainly AFSC will push out recommendations of ways to pressure your federal legislators. They're obviously not going to get at the national level. They don't get involved in state legislation or local legislation. So yeah, they will certainly, they make a lot of recommendations at the federal level. But the
Okay.
immigrant, one of the strengths of immigrant protection teams is that we are very involved at the local and the state level
On the
as well as
ground.
the
Mhm.
national level.
Okay, thank
But
you.
that's great to hear that there are similar things to immigrant protection teams in Arizona. I didn't realize that. That's
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
I just want to add quickly, because I want to move on to Lauren's presentation, but this National Immigrant Justice Center, the newsletter I was telling you about does have Know Your Rights in Immigration Court. And it was something new, and it's telling people, I think I was correct in saying there's not a whole lot you can do to stop it, but what you can do beforehand, if you have certain documents on you when you go, for example, because they're targeting people, like you said, Jenna, that haven't been in the United States. They haven't been the 2-year deadline. And it just talks about documents to bring and just different things that you can do. And maybe you can think about getting a lawyer for that. If there aren't any more questions, I'd like to introduce Lauren Thompson. And thank you again, Jenna. It was
course.
great. It's nice for me to hear in Denver everything that you're doing
And thank you
in
for
person.
inviting me. I appreciate it.
It's great. So Lauren Thompson is a member of the Latin American Caribbean Committee. We're very proud of all our young members that we have on our team. Most of them, Rosa on down to Molly Kameen and Stacy Fitzwater and Lauren just give us so much hope and brain power in our group, and we really appreciate you. Lauren teaches French and Spanish in a local Denver high school. Lauren volunteered with an immigrant organization in Northern Colorado, and I'll be darned if I can remember the name of it, Lauren. So I hope that you'll refresh us on that.
Yes.
And welcome.
Thank you, Maureen. Jenna, thank you so much. That is a hard act to follow, so I hope everybody can lower their expectations a little bit. I am just here this morning to chat about some anecdotes of what I have seen happening in the school systems, kind of as a result of what Jenna just told us about. Like Maureen said,
Lauren, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can I just ask you right now? We are recording. If you want us to pause the recording, we could.
I think I have it sorted out so that everything is anonymous enough.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, thank you for that consideration. Yes. As Maureen was saying, I worked at the Immigrant and Refugee Center of Northern Colorado for several years while I was in school and in grad school, which was just amazing. I taught English there, as well as did some volunteer coordinating and casework. But I think kind of to go into a little bit of background, just what got me interested in migration advocacy was that I was living in Senegal in 2018, and when I came back, one of the very first things that I saw kind of on the TV at the airport in Michigan for my connecting flight was people in cages. And that was, not a pleasant way to come back to your country. And after being, somewhat of a migrant situation in a different country, it touched me in a way that I couldn't turn away from. So that was kind of how I got involved. But as Maureen said, now I teach French and Spanish at the high school level, which I absolutely love. And a big part of that is supporting my students socially and emotionally. And that has been quite a challenge over the last, 7 or so months. I work with students who are freshmen to seniors, so quite a large age range. And what's awesome about that is that they are so aware of what's happening politically. And also what is not awesome about that is that they are so aware of what's going on politically. I noticed in November, when the election happened, there was a lot of kind of nervous energy among students, just generally among students, not just my migrant students. And that persisted for several months. And then in January, that nervous excitement turned into dread for a lot of students. And that was very much visible. I have one kiddo who's a freshman who is just so interested in history and social studies and government and just wants to know all of the things and has all of the questions. And I can't answer all of them, but it's so fun to find out the answers with him. And I saw a significant change in that curiosity around January, and kind of had, talked to him and said, hey, like, I just want to check in with you, see what's going on. And he said, I don't know if my dad will be home when I get home from school today, because we're Venezuelan. And it's very, I don't know, it's heartbreaking, as you can all imagine, to see these differences occur in students. I have another student who her humanitarian humanitarian visa just expired, as she is from Russia. She is an amazing student. She is was in my Spanish 1 class and just picked it up so fast and was so eager to practice because she's in our ELD program and has lots of other Spanish speakers around her. Amazing student. She finished off semester 1 with like a 3.9 GPA or something like this. And I checked in with her mid-semester this semester because that perfect 100% in Spanish had dropped down to a D. And just talked to her about, hey, like, I know you're really, really capable. I watch you speaking Spanish with your friends at a level that's higher than what I'm teaching you in class. What's going on? She said, why should I care about my grades if I don't know if I'm going to be here next month? And, it's hard. These are children. And I think we do a lot of, I don't know, I've just read an article this morning about the need for skilled labor and how we need migrants because of skilled labor. And I think a lot of what is left behind in those conversations is that they're people, they are children, they have inherent value, and none of this is changed by migration status. But yeah, so I think, I don't know, those are some of the anecdotes that I wanted to talk about. But I did want to talk about 2 sort of different interventions that we are unofficially taking within the schools around Denver. The first one is that I have seen teachers do an incredible job, and teachers all across the board, not just in English development programs and foreign language programs, really step up and be champions for our students and be able to defend our students, which has been, just awesome. And also, we shouldn't have to do that. They should just be able to be teenagers, and they should just be able to learn how to drive and play soccer and do all the things. I love that I have 3 Cuban boys that hang out with me at lunch every day, but I want them to be able to go and play soccer and do all those things. So I don't know, it's been really amazing to see just in daily interactions how teachers have been stepping up. And the other thing that I wanted to chat about was that, and I'm going to leave this unnamed. If anybody is interested, anybody in Colorado is interested, I'm happy to share more information. But there is kind of an unofficial coalition of teachers in Colorado, because right around, I want to say February or March, we got directives from our districts, or at least in my district, we got the directive that if and when ICE comes to schools, we need to be cooperative. I have an administrator who is very, very justice oriented, and he capped that with but you do what you need to do. This coalition is a group of teachers who has decided that in the case of ICE entering our schools, we will follow lockdown protocol as it is a threat to our students and to their safety. So that is the other thing that I have kind of seen teachers do and teachers unite about, which has been a really interesting and cool opportunity to see. Thankfully, in my community, we have not had to use that, but I know that in the surrounding districts, it has come up. So, yes. But anyway, that's about all I've got. Thank you so much for your time and for coming and listening to us this morning and for putting the spotlight on Colorado.
Thanks so much, Lauren. You know, in California, in my daughter's school, they have done the same thing because a lot of little ones cross the border every day. And I'm very close, and they can ride the trolley, they can go to high school here. But you know, they're vulnerable too. And what you said, they're children, they're little ones, you know, and it's horrible, you know. And the school where Carolyn works, they have, like, they had Dress to Impress Day last Friday, and the school has a whole wardrobe of dresses and little pants and stuff that the kids could put on because their parents can't come. You know, they can't cross the border. And so, I don't know. And we have the same thing, the rapid response. Thanks to, Maureen, I think it's you who got us going on that. I mean, me. And, but, so anyway, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Yeah, Jenna.
So it's really interesting hearing you talk about this. One of the things that the immigrant protection teams have been pushing school districts to do is to be more definitive and to provide more of a policy at the school district level so that it's not down to individual teachers. That's horrible. Or individual schools. I mean, talk about forcing teachers to bear the, you know, potential litigation burden. So I guess from your perspective, I mean, we've been using what DPS, the Denver Public Schools, has done. I'm sure you know they've produced a lot of different guidance and policies and, you know, family preparedness plans, all that kind of stuff for the families in their district. In our opinion, they've done the best job of that. I actually live in Boulder County, and we've pushed BVSD to do that, and they haven't done anywhere near as good a job. Other school districts haven't done as good a job. I'm asking from your perspective as a teacher, would you prefer to have more definitive policies set at the school district level rather than, I mean, I think it's horrible to advocate that responsibility to an individual teacher.
Me too.
Yeah. That's a good question. In my district in particular, no, I would not like directives because I would not like the directives that they would give me.
Okay.
However, I think that depending on time and place, that would be an awesome thing. But I know that in the community that I work in, that would probably
It would be
more than it would be helpful.
It would be the opposite of what you would normally do.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I hear you. Wow. Okay. Thank
Yes.
you.
But I do love the idea of kind of pressuring the district into taking more action. And there
Yeah.
are folks in my district who are working that way.
Mhm.
I know that Jefferson County where I live, which is west of Denver, they the school board sent directives to, and it took a long time because our counties encompass a lot of different cities. Jefferson County is a long, skinny county. And they do have directives that they're not supposed to, ICE can come into the school and into the administrative part of the school, but they're not supposed to infiltrate the classrooms. Now, whether a teacher would bring a student to ICE, I haven't talked to a teacher yet that would do that. But I don't know how persistent ICE is being these days. I was just happy because some of our Denver, I'm kind of surprised, is a more liberal county than some of these outlying ones. I think even Douglas County, which is very conservative, is not has directives not to let ICE into the classrooms. Can you imagine them coming into a classroom?
Unfortunately,
With
yes.
their guns and their military,
Yeah,
And their masks, you know, they all wear these masks. It's horrible.
right. Yeah. I
Well,
just
you know, the
wanted,
fear
Go ahead.
is that we're just at the beginning of this.
Mhm.
You know,
Yep.
how much worse is it going to get? How much more determined is ICE going to be with an additional 3.5 times their budget in resources?
Exactly.
It's really frightening.
Yeah, they have a directive, don't they have a quota directive? of
Yes.
How many people they have to deport a day?
3,000.
Mm.
Thank you,
I-
Steve Miller.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I just want to, well, thank you, Lauren, for that incredible, heart-wrenching, emotional presentation, and for doing it now. We are organizing a session for August that Lauren is putting together with other teachers. And we initially wanted it for today, but teachers take vacation. So, and they're entitled to, and they
And
should.
some are still teaching, you know.
And some are still teaching. So please stay tuned. It's gonna be either August 1st or the 8th. And we'll get more information later in terms of the availability, but that is just something that, you know, teachers all around have to contend with, and of course, you know, the students and the families. So just mark your calendars for that next immigration spotlight.
I think Alicia had her hand up. You're on mute, Alicia. Most of the trouble I get into for immigration advocacy is Alicia's fault. I just want everyone to know that.
And she took it up right and carried it on. But anyway, one thing I recently heard, and it's somewhat related to this, is that man from Turkey who committed a crime. He threw some cocktail fireballs into a group at a Jewish center. And he is an immigrant here on a visa that's expired. Nonetheless, he was taken in immediately, of course, by the authorities. But the Trump administration wanted to deport immediately. I don't know if it was expedited deportation, but anyway, his wife and 5 children, which was again almost immediately halted because they are innocent. They didn't do anything. But you know, I think things like that that this administration is doing is just, you know, I think we have to speak up more and more when we see again something like that. And I'm so glad of that particular area that stood up for the family and the children. So I don't know if that's happened with the Hispanic or the other border people, but it's something we have to be on the alert for, that they, you know, will take a vengeance on innocent people.
Mhm.
Mm-mm.
Well,
Any other questions or comments? We have a couple more minutes.
okay, how about if I just say some hopeful things?
Good.
Okay, with the shelters in Tijuana, they, for instance, their whole, they've got decimated because of USAID, but they are full. The Espacio Migrante has all Haitians. Well, maybe a couple that aren't Haitian. And many Haitians at this time are on the street. And Jimena, who works with the midwife, she was coming this weekend. We had a mini gathering that people came from. Connie was here from Guatemala, and Marianne and Martha and Mary Bundy. And she couldn't come because she works with pregnant women in the shelters and on the street. And a Haitian woman was having a baby on Saturday, and there were complications. There was no way she could leave. And also, Nicolasa from Arco Iris, which is a LGBTQ center, she came. And what's positive is they changed everything when Trump came in. And, like Espacio Migrante is having Spanish classes, helping the Haitian kids, tutoring them. How we're responding, just like what Gina was talking about. It's changed. I mean, and that's something Loretto does. We can't stick with the way we've been doing it. We have to be flexible and change. And at Nicolasa, okay, they don't have money from USAID, so they're renting some of their downstairs space. The shelter on top is full, but LGBTQ I plus, they're renting it out. They have a choir that comes that didn't have a space before, and they pay. I don't know how much they pay, but and I think it gives me hope that, okay, the situation is the pits here, but we have to figure out how we can be part of the response teams. We can do what we need to do, in daily life. And some of us, we have to pray, and which is cool. It's all needed. So that's all. But there's hope.
Great
And
update.
yeah, Dora next week is having a camp for all the kids who have been deported. And Bob's back to visiting the detention centers, which we didn't have to do. But
Jean, it's not the kids that have been deported. It's the kids that are still here.
Right. That are here because their families left.
Had to leave the
leave
violence.
from
Mhm.
Right.
Right. It was
Which
kind
is
of a
better now,
reverse
by the way.
deportation. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know. So anyway, such is life.
I just want to pull the thread through with our first reading. I met a woman, well, I didn't just meet her, Kathy Booker. You probably know her, Jenna. She went with me to court the other day because I don't speak Spanish and I wanted to know what was going on. And when I started talking about Arco Iris, she says, "Oh, I was just there last week."
Oh,
We
really?
didn't even know about that connection that we had. And one of the last lines of Rox's prayer was community is an act of resistance. And this community is tied together in so many ways.
Yeah.
I appreciate it dearly.
Me too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to our presenters, Jenna. Thank you so much. And Lauren and Maureen, thank you for pulling this together and bringing these issues and for all your hard work in Denver, all of you, Jenna and Lauren and Mary Jean at the border and everyone that is doing their part. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you for coming on to our Immigration Spotlight. So please join us in August. Stay tuned. We'll give you the details. And blessings to all. Take good care. Thank you. And everyone open up and say goodbye to everyone here.
Bye.
Carry on.
Thank you.
Carry on.
No.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.